Hello, friends, and welcome to our SBT Sutra Studies class. My name is Venerable Tarpa, and before we begin our class, let's take a moment to appreciate our handsome community gathered here today. Today, I feel fortunate to sit as a member of this kind community in the safety and security of like-minded friends, sharing this present moment with others dedicated to the cultivation of goodness. Today, I'm grateful for the direction and support that this community provides, a community worthy of my time and commitment, a community where my efforts have meaning, purpose, and are appreciated. Today, I'm thankful for this community of awakening, a place to gain the knowledge and skills to improve my life, a family, a home, and a sanctuary for all of us seeking refuge from the storm. And let's remember, as conscientious practitioners, we must recognize our responsibility to the world, to strive to live skillfully while helping others to do the same, to strive to live in balance and harmony with nature and others, to strive to gain mastery over our minds and embody our true benevolent nature, to expand our hearts and minds, transcending our shared human limitations, to not intentionally harm sentient life or our planet, to maturely accept and embrace the reality of our situation while striving to improve it. Once again, welcome to our SBT Sutra Studies class. We are currently examining the Dhammapada, one of the very, very classic collections of sutras, and we're enjoying it very, very much. Today we will be covering chapter 8, entitled Thousands. So, okay, why don't we just get right into it? What did you guys think? Did you enjoy this chapter? People were commenting they thought it was very poetic and pretty, and yeah, I enjoyed it as well. Let me just take a quick look at our participants here. Very nice. Catherine Neal, are you able to read Dharma Sutra passages? Oh, that's awesome. Okay, just seeing who we got here. Yoli made it, good to hear. I think Chantel is here. Lovely, all our instructors are here. Now they're big shots. Now they're not instructors in training anymore. Now they're full-fledged SBT instructors. Watch out, world. And we got Darcy here to do a little bit of reading. Okay, let's see if I can remember everybody. So with that said, hey, let's put our script up on the screen for everybody. And of course, like all of you know, we have three major texts that we're reading from, and each one has a really unique version or a presentation of them. And through the three, we get a pretty good take on what they are. So our first collection of verses is, wow, there's a whole bunch here. The first is 6 verses that were all spoken at Bamboo Grove. So we'll read these. How about we read them at a couple at a time? Yoli, would you like to start with the first 2?
Sure. Better than a meaningless statement of 1,000 words is a single word of deep meaning, which, when heard, produces peace. Better than 1,000 verses that pile up meaningless remarks is a single verse of deep meaning, which, when heard, produces peace.
And I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to go across the 3 versions or presentations and work kind of horizontally. So we if we read them all in a row, we might not have problems be able to put them together. So let's move to the next one. And how about Chantel? Can you read the first 2? You might be muted.
Sorry, Tapa. Better than 1,000 useless words is one useful word, hearing which one attains peace. Better than 1,000 useless verses is one useful verse, hearing which one attains peace.
Wonderful. Darcy, would you like to read the first 2?
Better than 1,000 meaningless statements is one meaningful word, which, having been heard, brings peace. Better than 1,000 meaningless verses is one meaningful line of a verse, which, having been heard, brings peace.
Thank you. So, as you probably have all taken so far after studying it, this whole chapter is about quantity over quality, right? And this chapter also defines the difference. What is quality and what is quantity? So that's basically what they are. I think a great deal of them don't really take much commentary. So we might have a bit of a short class unless anybody has questions. And again, if you have questions, you can type them into the chat, or you can just go ahead and share. I can't see everybody at the same time on the screen. If you raise your hand, I might not be able to see it. You can just go ahead and ask questions. Neil, would you like to read 3 and 4 here?
Yeah, no problem. Better than reciting 100 verses that have no meaning is to recite one verse of the Dharma, which when heard produces peace. The one who has conquered himself is a far greater hero than the one who has defeated 1,000 times 1,000 men.
Thank you. Catherine, would you like to read 102 and 103?
Better than reciting 100 meaningless verses is the reciting of one verse of Dharma, hearing which one attains peace. Oh, that's the wrong one. Though one may conquer 1,000 times.
It should be one. That was correct. That was 102 and 103, right? Yeah, that was correct. Now 103, please.
Though one may conquer 1,000 times 1,000 men in battle, yet he indeed is the no blessed victor who conquers himself.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Yeah, we're okay on that. We're on 102 and 103. And I hear some sound in the background. Is somebody asking a question, Catherine, or does somebody need to be muted? Sometimes people yell at their pets during their sessions, and you just look at the little microphone going up and down. It tells you who's yelling at their pet at this present moment. It's probably Darcy yelling at her cat. Okay. Chantal, would you like to read 102 and 103?
Sure. Better than reciting 100 meaningless verses is one line of Dharma, which, having been heard, brings peace. Greater in combat than a person who conquers 1,000 times 1,000 people is the person who conquers herself.
Oh, that's lovely. And isn't it refreshing that he translates this and he alternates between male and female? Myself, too, as a monk, I've been so conditioned that everything is male. And it's so sad. I noticed it specifically when it comes to Buddhas. I myself always refer to Buddhas as male. And it's so refreshing to see the Buddhas, the many Buddhas. She was once a beautiful Buddha. It's absolutely lovely. Let's take a look at this note really quick over here at 102. Dhamapada is here translated as a line of Dharma. I don't think anybody knows what Dhammapada means. There's like a million different translations of it. But generally in these two verses, I think the big takeaway is this last one, 103. And I think most religions and ideologies always present this idea that it's better to work on yourself and gain mastery of yourself rather than gaining mastery of the world. A favorite quote of mine that I've always enjoyed, well, it comes from Zen, and it's paraphrased. It's better to be a simple meditator sitting on a mountain stream than to be emperor of the world. And I always remember that's really pretty. Yeah.
There's some in the chat. Tenzin Zopa says 103 is my favorite verse in this chapter, and Carla agrees. And Kelly, she says that if it's Sanskrit, pada usually translates as at the feet of or following the feet of.
Thank you. Great. Okay, let's move on to 104 and 105. And Chantal, would you like to read these?
Beings who have mastered themselves move always with restraint. How much better to conquer oneself than to conquer a host of others. Neither the gods, nor the Gandharvas, I think, neither Mara or Brahma can defeat those of disciplined character who has mastered themselves.
Wonderful. And yes, Granhavaras is the god of music. Is it something like that? We'll see it in the note of the other. Mara and Brahma. So that's both the chief of gods, the highest of all gods, and the Lord of Death. Or Mara is a symbol of afflictions, limitations, and samsara. So it's better to discipline yourself and become a master than to be any kind of deity or things that other people would claim. And Darcy, would you like to read 104 and 105? They're put together in a single verse in this.
Sure. Self-conquest is far better than the conquest of others. Not even a god, an angel, Mara, or Brahma can turn into defeat the victory of a person who is self-subdued and ever restrained in conduct.
Yeah, Buddha Rakita's translations are or interpretations are sometimes a bit hard to read. It's kind of strange to see the word angel. You don't see that very often in Buddhism. 12, Brahma, the high divinity, a high divinity in ancient religious scriptures. Sorry, everybody. Trying to do too many things at once. And we have 104, 105. I think I'll read one here. For someone who is self-restrained and always lives with mastery, neither a god or Gandharva, nor Mara, nor Brahma together could turn conquest into defeat. Isn't that the prettiest of each one of those verses, right? And again, the same idea. They're praising self-mastery. Is there anything more important than self-mastery? And so this comes down to the very definition of Buddhism itself. Buddhism is about gaining control over our minds. Buddhism is about self-mastery. Enlightenment is someone who has mastered themselves, right? In any way, that's exactly what Buddhism is. It's always about enlightening ourselves through training our minds, emotions, and gaining control over that. Oh, we got some great readers here today. And we have another one from Bamboo Grove. And Yoli, would you like to read 106 and 107?
Better than making hundreds of offerings for thousands of months in a row is a single moment of honor paid to the master of meditation. Such respect is better by far than 100 years of making sacrifices. Better than 100 years in the forest tending the sacrificial fire is a single moment of honor paid to a master of meditation. Such respect is better by far than 100 years of making sacrifices.
Oh, thank you. And I'm forgetting about probably quite a few instructors. Nigel, could you read 106 and 107?
Yes, certainly. 106. Better than 1,000 ritual sacrifices.
Could you read the screen, Nigel?
Oh, okay. Let me just switch screens to that. Okay.
Take your time. Take your time.
Yeah, let me see if I can find that. Okay, here we go. Though month after month for 100 years, one should offer sacrifices by the thousands. Yet, if only for a moment, one should worship those of perfected minds, that honor is indeed better than a century of sacrifice. Though for 100 years, one should tend the sacrificial fire in the forest, yet if only for a moment, one should worship one of perfected something. That's
Oh,
the end of the screen. Oh,
it's right
minds
here,
that
sorry.
minds that worship is indeed better than a century of sacrifice.
Oh, thank you. That was lovely. And how about Neil? You want to read 106 or 107?
Yeah. Better than 1,000 ritual sacrifices offered every month for 100 years is one moment's homage offered to one who has cultivated herself. Better than 100 years in the forest tending a ritual fire is one moment's homage offered to one who has cultivated himself.
Oh, thank you so much, everybody. So these two phrases are very much symbolic of the cultural time of the Buddha. So in both of these cases, this is really talking about the Brahmins who their whole life is about ritual sacrifices. The Brahmins have a practice of the 3 fires where inside their home they have to keep 3 fires continuously burning at all times. The 3 fires in Brahmanism, the Buddha actually turns on its side and he turns it into the 3 poisons or the 3 fires of greed, hatred, and delusion. That's what keeps us trapped in samsara. So the Brahmin faith is uniquely attached to fire, more so than the Jain religion at the time. And so, and one of his criticism is that the Brahmins, basically, the biggest part of their religion is making sacrifices to the gods for things. And of course, in Buddhism, he believes that instead of that, we should liberate ourselves through our own study and hard work, right? Yeah. So better to spend time with an awakened being than to do all this stuff for the gods, and who knows if the gods are even out there. Yeah, very good. Tom, did you want to read one for us? Are you reading today?
Tapa, there's a couple of things in the chat.
Oh, please. Can you share them?
Chantel says the continuous focus on the individual as having agency to attain awakening is so different than some texts that emphasize the belief in a higher deity to achieve enlightenment.
Well said. That you ain't kidding. That's the big difference between Buddhism and other faiths.
And Tenzin Zopa says, I don't like the word worship in those verses.
Yeah, in fact, I didn't notice them there as much. Were they here? One should worship those. Yeah, it's 7. One worship those who perfected mind. Agreed. Remember, they're translated terms, so what terms were actually used, we're not quite sure about. But I guess we balance that with our own understanding of the Dharma, knowing that Buddhists don't worship. That's not what we Buddhists can pay homage to great teachers and the Buddha. We can appreciate them for their contribution and their teachings, but we don't. But it's said that Buddhists don't worship. So I agree with you, Zopa. It's amazing how much we have to overlook, isn't it? Yeah.
Kelly says, I'm sure that it's a translation thing. I'm looking for the original Pali to see what the word that is. Pali is similar to Sanskrit, and I might be able to offer some nuance around that translation.
Thank you. Okay. And I take it, Tom, are you able to read, or do you want to? I can't keep a track of all our instructors. Yoli, would you like to read number 9, 108 here?
Making offerings and giving gifts for a whole year with an eye to gaining merit in this world cannot begin to match the finer offerings of reverence for the righteous.
Oh, that's lovely. Miss Catherine, would you like to read 108?
Whatever gifts and oblations one seeking merit might offer in this world for a whole year. All that is not worth 1/4 of the merit gained by revering the upright ones, which is truly excellent.
Is there a dog barking near you, Miss Catherine? Oblation is a word that means the act of contributing to the funds of a church or charity. So donations, huh? Okay. And we have 108 here. Yoli, would you like to read 108?
Whatever sacrifice or offering a merit seeker might perform an entire year is not worth 1/4 as much as expressing respect for those who are upright.
So again, they're kind of repeating the same thought that goes through. And one of my criticisms of this paragraph, this chapter, is it just kind of keeps reiterating this quality over quantity. It's poetic and quite beautiful. And I guess it's clarifying what is quality, or what is a quality thing over or a quantity thing. So, Chantal, would you like to read 109?
For those who show courtesy and respect to elders, 4 things will increase: long life, beauty, happiness, and strength.
Oh, and I've gotten all of those so far. And Nigel, how about 109?
Okay. From the screen.
From the screen, yeah. You're unmuted, Nigel. You're still muted.
Okay, sorry about that.
No
To
problem.
one ever eager to revere and serve the elders, these 4 blessings accrue: long life and beauty, happiness and power.
Thank you. Neil, would you like to read 109?
For the person who shows respect and always reveres worthy people, 4 things increase: lifespan, beauty, happiness, and strength.
Oh, thank you. So the 4 things that increase are the same in each one of the presentations. I don't know about lifespan. Beauty, happiness, and strength, I think they come from us doing virtuous things. Beauty truly is inner beauty makes your external beauty shine. There's no doubt about that. And of course, happiness and strength. But lifespan, we'll see. I'm going to turn 60 this year, and it'll take us a couple years to test that out. Wasn't it interesting in Bodharakita's verse that he talks about to revere to serve the elders? They refer to it as the elders. That's kind of pretty cool.
Tapa, there's some discussion going on in the chat about what we were talking before. Johanna says a secular interpretation is what we value, rituals or virtue for worship in this context. And David says, what are SBT's thoughts on developing merit?
Oh, very good. So merit can be a little bit of a complex question. If we're talking about, in the secular world, merits is the virtuous. How do I want to explain merit? So it's the quality of something, right? The merits of my actions, and I think it's whether it's virtuous or non-virtuous, right? So the merits of my giving, the merits of my actions, the merits of my generosity, merits of our speech. So this is a secular word that we use all the time. But in the religious context, very much merits can be something that I'm not expressing this very well. In the Theravada traditions, merit can be seen basically is the same thing as good karma. In that sense, no problem. That can be a secular Buddhist term as well, meaning the karmic imprints we get from our actions, whether we do something and we feel good about it, we feel guilty about it. This is the idea of karma. And so if we're doing good things, like for lay people in the Theravada tradition, giving food to monks is a form of attaining merit. They earn goodness from the action. And they have the hope that if they see it a little bit like good luck or bargaining, that if they give to monks, then something good's going to come back to them. But in the Mahayana tradition, merit kind of takes on a different flavor, where merit is something, goodness that can be transferred from one person to another. And secular Buddhism would have a problem with that. I have a problem with that thought, that a lama can bump me on the head with a stick and somehow give me something of his realization. Of course, the Buddha clearly states that this is not the case. The Buddha says something like, Buddhists can't heal with their hands, they can't wash away sin with water. The Buddhists can't pass on the realization to others, which is in a sense merit. But the only thing the Buddhists can do is teach the nature of reality. So that's a strong sentiment throughout the Buddhist teachings, that the Buddhists aren't able to pass on the realization to others. So is merit an aspect of secular Buddhism? It depends on what kind of merit we're talking about. And to be honest, I'm not quite sure. The secular word of merit, like the merits of your actions, that's an okay term to use when we're just talking about the quality of your thought, speech, actions. I hope that's helpful and not too convoluted.
Tapa, Carlos has found out the word for worship, which is abhivadana. His dictionary translates that as respectful greeting, salutation, giving welcome, showing respect or devotion.
Thank you, Carlos. That's very nice. And does anybody remember what number we're on? Are we on 109?
110, Tapa.
I think so, you're right. And since you're so good at the numbers, Chantal, could you read 110 for us? How about
Sure.
one? Yeah, sure.
A life of only a single day spent in virtuous meditation is better than living 100 years unbalanced and immoral.
That's lovely. Yeah, we got a couple here. Okay, that's 111. And how about Darcy, 111, please?
Better it is to live one day wise and meditative than to live 100 years foolish and uncontrolled.
That's really good. Nigel, 111, please. Right there.
Okay, 111. Better than 100 years lived with an unsettled mind, devoid of insight, is one day lived with insight and absorbed in meditation.
So I like the different language of each presentation, all talking about basically the same state, but pretty interesting, huh? Unsettled, no insight. This one, uncontrolled. I think it was Giden Shipos that was fascinating. To spend in virtue, yeah. Unbalanced and immoral. That's pretty funny. Unbalanced is quite an accurate term, isn't it? When we look at samsara, when we really lack stability, and with awakening comes an incredible balance in one's life. Oh, that's wonderful. And let's move on to 112. And
Papa, we got a little bit more in the chat about merit from
sure.
Jahan. In Mahayana, they can distinguish between worldly and spiritual merit. Worldly merit is produced by good deeds that do not lead to progress on the path to enlightenment, and spiritual merit by good deeds that do. Personally, I'm not so sure that would differ in a secular context, e.g. helping others with a medical problem would still develop kindness in that person.
Thank you. Very nice. That brings us great clarity. And Catherine, would you like to read 112?
A life of only a single day spent in firm commitment and effort is better than living 100 years lazy and confused.
Getting Chirpa has a way of words, doesn't he? That's lazy and confused. Nigel, would you like to read 112?
Okay. Better it is to live one day strenuous and resolute than to live 100 years sluggish and dissipated.
Oh, I love the language, yeah. Darcy, would you like to read 112?
Better than 100 years lived without seeing, wait a minute, that's not the right one. Better than 100 years lived lazily and lacking in effort is one day lived with vigor and exertion.
Oh, it really paints a picture, doesn't it? I like that. Okay. Chantal, how about 113?
A life of only a single day spent in awareness of birth and death is better than living 100 years oblivious to birth and destruction.
Oh, that's great. I'll read one. Better it is to live one day seeing the rise and fall of things than to live as 100 years without ever seeing the rise and fall of things. And Yoli, how about 113?
Better than 100 years lived without seeing the, is that the one?
Yeah.
Okay. Better than 100 years lived without seeing the arising and passing of things is one day lived seeing their arising and passing.
That's lovely. And that is the arising and passive things is a translation referred to one of the important insights leading to wisdom and liberation. The ancient commentator interprets it to mean the arising and passing of the five components, the five aggregates of a body, feeling, sensation, in volition and consciousness. So that's understanding the momentary arising and passing of the aggregates coming and going. Oh, that's great. And oblivious to the birth and destruction. And so again, what they're really talking about here is a life spent, a single day understanding the nature of things, the nature of existence, the way the body functions, the way our mind works, but being aware of our true nature and the true nature of reality. Just one day of that is better than spending 100 years without it.
Tapa, Kelly has a comment on verse 106.
Sure.
It also uses the word pujai, which comes from puja in Sanskrit. I would certainly translate this as worship, but in Pali it's often translated as veneration or honor. So we can sort of see the evolution of language as well. How interesting, if you're me.
Very much so, yeah. And veneration is probably the best word in the Buddhist context. We venerate the Buddha, right? We don't worship the Buddha. Thank you, Kelly. You're wonderful. Nigel, Neil, can you read 114 for us?
Yeah. A life only, a single day seeing the way of immortality is better than living 100 years without a glimpse of immortality.
Yeah. And Nigel, would you like to read 114?
Okay. Better it is to live one day seeing the deathless than to live 100 years without ever seeing the deathless.
And Yoli, would you like to read 114?
Better than 100 years lived without seeing the ultimate Dharma is one day lived seeing the ultimate Dharma. Is that the one?
On the screen here, yeah,
okay.
114, the top one.
I'm sorry. Better than 100 years lived without seeing the deathless is one day lived seeing the deathless.
And so we've had this term deathless throughout our studies, and deathless refers to nirvana, seeing, and they often talk about samsara as being the state of death. So that's been a vocabulary that we're familiar with, right? So again, interesting. Ginshapa uses immortality, and but the idea is beyond life and death, right? That you've progressed beyond that full enlightenment. So a life of only a single day seeing nirvana is better than living hundreds of years without seeing nirvana. Chantal, would you like to read 115?
Sure. A life of only a single day seeing the excellent Dharma is better than living 100 years without a glimpse of the Dharma.
I agree. Darcy, would you like to read 115?
Better it is to live one day seeing the supreme truth than to live 100 years without ever seeing the supreme truth.
Boy, you see how the different presentations really bring home the meaning, doesn't it? To see the Dharma as the supreme truth. And Stephen Batchelor wouldn't like that idea. He doesn't like seeing Dharma as a supreme truth. And Catherine, would you like to read 115?
Better than 100 years lived without seeing the ultimate Dharma is one day lived seeing the ultimate Dharma.
Oh, and that's beautiful. And that's the end of the chapter. And so for so many of these, there's not much commentary for me to give. I think they're all pretty straightforward. And so the last one is just, to be blessed with coming to the Dharma for however long that may be is better than living lifetimes and lifetimes without such a thing. And I personally feel very blessed that I stumbled across Buddhist books years and years ago, because I would have never thought these thoughts without them, right? So let's open up the floor to any more comments, questions, or insights?
I have some thoughts.
Yeah, Donna.
I was taking notes. I was not prepared. I did not read the chapter. Shame on me. But I came up with.
It's okay.
I was verse simple things began the chapter, like verses and words. And at the end of the chapter, there were things versus meditation, sacrifices versus mind, and merit seekers versus the righteous. And it ends with samsara versus being awakened. So I saw that whole building up to the main point of the chapter, not so much time, but that's a big part of it, but that building up to where we want to be.
I agree. It shows us the difference between quality and quantity, but on a lot of different levels. And so I agree with you. Yeah, it kind of defines what they mean by quality, right? Thank you. I agree. Would anybody else like to share?
I have a question.
Sure, Scott.
Okay, I understand if people say hearing the Dharma, that makes sense to me. I hear the Dharma, but seeing the Dharma makes no sense to me. What's that referring to? How do you see the Dharma?
Seeing the excellent Dharma is before the living. Seeing the I think I would just say seeing the Dharma, seeing monks in action, seeing people practicing the Dharma, seeing the results of the Dharma, just the effects of the Dharma. That's what I would say.
So that would reverse the Sangha.
Maybe seeing. I would say seeing the Dharma means coming into contact with the Dharma. being there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's a guess on my part. They often talk about engaging with the Dharma in different ways like that. So, yeah. Good question, Scott. Would anybody else like to share? Should I take this off the screen? Yeah. Did you find it to be a productive chapter? To me, well, I have a pretty good education, but it seemed fairly simple, but it was nice to hear again. And I agree with most of you that it was nice that it was quite a poetic chapter. It was kind of pretty. And I really liked all the adjectives. That's what my favorite part was. Darcy?
Yeah, I enjoyed all the chapters and all three of them. But I really liked the comments in the comment section, which gave me more to think about.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah, but I love words. So when they start to talk about these same people and things, and they use all these different terminologies, to me it's just fascinating. It kind of puts together a jigsaw puzzle and really gives you an image of what they're talking about. David?
Yeah, when I'd read it, I kind of, they all seem very similar to me, and I intended to ask you at the end of the talk, could you just sort of summarize what this is about in a short sentence? But right at the very beginning, you said, well, it's primarily about quality before quantity. And just in 3 words, that to me kind of summarize beautifully what the whole thing's about. So thank you.
I do have a conclusion too that I'll share in a little bit. I always try to bring that in. Darcy, did you have another question? Okay. Put your hand down if you could. Chantel?
Okay, Tarbo, I hope I can articulate this okay. So they talk about 1,000 being, or one being better than 1,000, and sometimes it takes us 1,000 to attain some minute form of awakening. So if, after all of your iterations, maybe 1,000 or however many, if you realize that one is so special and it's so, so magnificent, it's something to look forward to.
Yeah, it's poetic, but to put that into language, to put that into real life is quite a different thing, isn't it? We had a little conversation about this the other day, and the conversation went to, well, how do we know we have a venerated person, right? How do we know that this is an arhat or a sage, or And there are pieces in the parts in the sutras that explain, what a good teacher should look like. And in my text, Tibetan Buddhist Essentials, in volume 3, there's quite a bit there on traditionally what to look for in a good teacher. And thank God I cover every one of those points. No, I just kidding. Yeah, but yeah, it's really true. Yeah. And then, they make, again, I don't like that there's so much dichotomy in this. It's so binary, this or that. And so when you hear language like that, the first thing I think is that I don't think the Buddha wrote it, because that's a very limited understanding. The Buddha wrote a beautiful piece on the problems with this, that he said, people are caught up in this and that people can't see beyond objectifying everything dualistically. And wisdom is when you move past that. And in your own practice, you can move past that, and you really start to see the world outside of that dualistic norm that everyone else sees. You start to see the spectrum in everything, because everything exists as spectrums. You don't see, should I quit my job or should I stay? All of a sudden you realize, well, there's 1,000 other or 100 other possibilities between those two. So as you awaken, that starts to happen. And for myself, I can when I read other teachers, I can tell sometimes their level of understanding, because some teachers, some I admire very much, but clearly they're still stuck in that dualistic binary way of thinking. And this chapter really has a problem with that completely, right? What so far we have, right? You're either a sage or you're a fool. It doesn't give us any other description of people between the two. Either you follow the Dharma and you're a sage, or you don't and you're a fool. So right away, I'm suspicious of all of that. I take it with a grain of salt and I interpret it the best I can. So everything we've studied so far, to me, requires a huge amount of interpretation to be applicable in my own life, right? And then that interpretation takes a bit of education. You read a lot of things and you know, well, the Buddha said this over here and he said this over here, and it helps you understand it. So as a Sangha, we can work together to interpret these and get them to make sense for us.
Yeah, Tarpa, I just have to say also that your idea of a spectrum, or the idea of a spectrum, helps me to understand this contemplation that I'm having.
Yeah, everything exists in a spectrum. Mm-hmm. And the things in our lives are never our problem. Our problem is our relationship to things, right? Which is a spectrum, right? So, yeah, that's helpful. Amazing insight. And so much our history has been influenced by binary thinking. You ain't kidding. Us and them, left and right. That's right. That's it. It's huge. It's a very, very simple way. They often say that's one of the Dalai Lama's greatest qualities. Scientists that meet him will say it's fascinating that he sees the whole 360 around a problem. He's not caught in the binary. He sees the whole thing, the whole enchilada, right, Carlos? I think enchiladas are Mexican, not Spanish. I'm culturally unaware, I'm sorry. Any other comments or questions or insights? What I really enjoyed was everybody participating a lot today. Thanks everybody for digging in. That was great. We had people looking up definitions of words and translations, and that makes it really fun. Catherine?
Yeah, talking about definitions, Kelly, she says that for the linguistically curious, in 114 to 115, Dhamman Uttaman is what is translated as deathless, but it's literally the supreme highest Dharma. So that's interesting.
Thank you. Yeah, and that works well with the meaning that we understand, being nirvana, which is a state of attainment, but nirvana is often called the ultimate truth. And so, yeah, thank you, Miss Kelly. That's lovely. Okay, with that said, how about if I sum this up with a little bit of, I wanted to just do a little conclusion here. When I write these conclusions, basically what I just go through, I read the presentations and I try to maybe add one more voice and maybe simplify some things or call out some things that I'd seen. So I'm just going to read through the bullet points. So, one thing I wanted to, before we get into this, there's one thing that I've been meaning to talk about and I hadn't. So far, we've had a lot of references to gods in the Dhammapada, and was really meaning to address this. So, they talk about the Hindu gods here. They talk about gods in Buddhism. They're talking about 6 realms of existence in the desire realm of human beings. And it starts with, at the bottom, hell realms and hungry ghost realms and animal realms, fighting deity realm and diva realm. And a diva is often translated as God. A diva is a lesser kind of an idea of God. Divas are still trapped in samsara like the rest of us, but they are at the highest end of pleasure and delight in the world. they claim that they're very powerful. Of course, this is traditional Buddhism. As a secular Buddhist, these are not a part of my belief system. I don't believe in mystical beings. But nevertheless, so when they talk about devas, they're not like the God in Christianity or others that create the universe. They're lesser gods than that. But one of the reasons why a lot of Buddhists don't consider themselves atheists and instead will call themselves non-theistics is because the mention of gods throughout the Buddhist scriptures. There are stories that when the Buddha became enlightened, he didn't want to teach the Dharma. He didn't think anyone could understand it. And the Hindu gods come to him and beg him to teach. Interesting, Buddha is a greater being than any of the gods. But the Buddha claimed he never found a God of creation. And so therefore, Buddhism doesn't assert a God of creation, which would be theistic. And instead, there are this idea of gods within traditional Buddhism. And many traditional Buddhists do believe in these gods. So that's one of the reasons why Buddhism is considered non-theistic instead of atheist. And I think all secular Buddhists, just by using the name secular, it's not a part of our belief system that we believe in mystical beings and things like that. Darcy?
Is there a difference between non-theistic and agnostic?
A very big difference. Non-theistic refers to you believing in gods, but not a creator God. And I would say that this is the definition of Robert Thurman. He's the one that really kind of came up with this idea of that Buddhists call themselves non-theistics. So that's the idea. Agnostic is a whole nother thing. Yeah, and I have a chat here from Kelly. Deva is often translated as demigod as well. Okay, they're often understood as just being aspects of the supreme truth with a face and no name or personality. So that would help. Very good. In Buddhism, they're actually physical beings, and you can be born if you have very good karma. You can be born as a god in the God realm, and be delighted to have all those things. But eventually you have to die, and then you have to be reborn in a lower realm. So better to be a Buddha than a god. That's the notion of the story. But I just wanted to give everybody some insight. We'll still be hearing quite a bit of gods throughout the Dhammapada. Catherine or Neil?
It's me. I like the idea of sometimes seeing these gods as just being aspects of our personality. So like when Mara pops up, him or her being our shared human limitations, and rather than actually being a god, but being an aspect of our personalities.
It's a very popular belief, and many traditional Buddhists will interpret the 6 realms of existence as 6 kind of environments and personality states within this world. As secular Buddhists, I just don't bother thinking much about any of that. So, but it can be helpful to people. So, again, we don't tell people what to believe. We just share Dharma here. Each individual that comes to SBT is free to make up their own mind. So moving on, thousands here pertains to quality or versus quantity. One of this is better than 1,000 of these. It kind of goes through the whole thing. Whether it's a word, act, deed, offering, quality, attainment, duration of time, or mastery over oneself. So that's what it is. And instead of this, this is better than 1,000 of those. Again, quality over quantity, the profound over the mundane. And it probably addresses the last verse, right? The profound over the mundane. That's what we're coming down to. And in Tibetan, they have this lovely idea of trading candy for gold. And the idea is that, though candy is delicious and and everybody likes it. Candy has a momentary pleasure. And of course, you can buy a lot of candy for the same price as a bar of gold, but it's better to trade in the short-term pleasure of candy, which is detrimental to our health. Better to trade that in for gold, which would be which would help us in the long run, right? So we're trading in short-term pleasures for long-term pleasures. An idea I always liked in Tibetan Buddhism. One who has conquered themselves shows self-restraint and lives with mastery. Isn't that a lovely comment? And that is what Buddhism is, right? We're conquering ourselves, mastering ourselves, living with restraint, right? To honor a noble being is greater than years of making offerings. This is very strong throughout the Buddhist teachings, that it's better to be in living Dharma with a teacher and everything than making all kinds of foolish offerings. And I like the way they're defining noble beings. So so far we've been talking about sages and arhats within the last few chapters. And in this chapter, they talk about the noble being. So they're defining this as full of goodness, humility, understanding, wisdom, and restraint. One who is authentic, discerning, virtuous, passionless, tamed, trained, controlled, free of defilements, and unmoved by the 8 worldly concerns. One of my favorite, the good friend. I thought that was so lovely. Noble being is the good friend, one who is free of sorrow and completely free. Hey, excuse me. It's better to live one day immersed in the true Buddhadharma than to live 100 years without. That was a lovely quote. So we often use the word Dharma in our teachings. We talk about Buddha, Dharma, Sangha, but Dharma is a very inclusive word. There's so many different presentations of it. In all the various religions, you find the word Dharma in Hinduism, Jainism. I like to make it unique and use the word Buddha Dharma, because there's no misunderstanding that when we talk about Buddha Dharma, we're talking about the teachings, the truth, the path of the Buddha. So those were some of the insights I had. There wasn't really that much to comment on. Do we have any last questions, insights, or comments? It was a fun chapter, huh? Did you enjoy it? Yeah, me too. And I'm really excited to where it's all going. So remember that the sutra teachings are meant as practice instructions. So in order to get the greatest benefit, we must engage fully with them, utilizing the 3 great objectives: study, contemplation, and meditation. Your work this week is to discover how these teachings apply to your daily life, transforming them from words on a page into living Dharma. So for this chapter, we have to kind of look at our lives and see where we're spending our energy. And are we doing a lot of these thousands of different things instead of focusing on what's important, right? So I think this week, it's a bit of an evaluation of the way we're looking at Dharma and our intentions, actions, and efforts. Next week, we're going to be moving on to chapter 9 of the Dhammapada, which is on evil. So that'll be super exciting. Okay, let's end today's class with our altruistic aspiration. May all be healthy, may all be prosperous, may all be well. May all be present, free of past regret and future worry. May all abide in constant appreciation, which is a source of great joy and contentment. May all realize their true nature and the true nature of reality, which is awakening. Thanks, everybody, for coming and spending the night with me. Tomorrow night, we are not having a teaching. I am taking a day off now that our 10-week meditation meditation is over. And also, this is a bit of a tough week because I'm traveling to America, and I have a feeling that my travel plans are going to interfere with some of our daily meditations. I haven't quite figured it out yet, but there's a chance I may have to miss Monday and Tuesday for our meditations because I'm trapped in an airport and a hotel for that time. But I'll post something. I think Miss Catherine offered to jump in if she can. And so we'll see how that goes. But I'm excited on setting everything up and coming to you from America for the next time we see each other. I'll be here tomorrow for our regular meditation. So thanks again, everybody, for coming. Practice hard. I'm proud of all of you. Bye-bye.
I thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Tarpa.
Anytime.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. See ya. Great. Anytime. De nada. Oh, what are you guys doing here? See you in a little while.
Bye-bye.
Oh, look at that. Look at that, put 'em.